Giants out of our hair and shall all week until the Ravens head up to play the Jets again. I probably should have gotten a cot up there. At least I could do is probably get an Odell Beckham emoji at this point. This guy has those. He covers all things Giants and the New York football scene for ESPN, and we welcome him in. He is Jordan Raanan, and you can follow his journey out on Twitter as well as at ESPN at Jordan Raanan. That's Raanan. He was there in the Meadowlands, and hey, man, I know you got the budding superstar up there and all that stuff with the Giants, but it'd be hard-pressed to find a better effort than Odell Beckham. I mean, I said single-handedly, and it sure felt that way. It's going to feel that way for a long time, I think, here in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, look, he had 2 plays of 50-plus yards, 3 plays of 40-plus yards. He really just took over the game, despite actually leaving in the first half with a hip injury. So, look, the Giants are a team. They only go as far as Odell Beckham and Eli Manning take them, and the goal is if you can contain those 2 guys, you'll have a really good chance of beating the Giants. And as you saw on Sunday, the Ravens just could not do that. And, it was a little curious. Teams have really kept 2 safeties deep, one over the top against Beckham pretty consistently. And it's been a philosophy that has worked really well against the Giants this year. And their offense has stumbled pretty badly. And the Ravens, they took some chances. They left some single high safeties, and you end up with 66-yard touchdowns like you had at the end of the game.
We sit around here all week and talk about coaching decisions, right? And, I took phone calls for 22 years. I haven't taken them the last couple of years sort of famously. And I look at my Facebook page and my Twitter page, and it's, fire the coach. It's coach decision. But then you go back in this game and look at decisions to go for it with 18 inches that later on you can always second guess. But at the end of the day, the Ravens were missing 5 Pro Bowl players to start the game, lost 2 more of that caliber before the game was over. And I think around here we take Jimmy Smith for granted. It's amazing the minute he went out of the game, you put a 5th cornerback on Odell Beckham, and I don't know that any lead would have been safe enough for the Ravens on Sunday.
Yeah, you could tell that the switch definitely flipped, and when Jimmy Smith left that game was a huge factor. It really seemed to change the outlook of that game. But yeah, the Ravens were decimated, but the Giants played pretty awful first half. They were really bad. And you talk about people questioning coaching decisions. Ben McAdoo was fired in the first half by pretty much every Giants fan imaginable. They went 20-plus minutes without a first down against that decimated Ravens.
And the fans were not shy about letting them know that. As I said, that's the Bronx cheer traveling across the Hudson to Jersey, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was pretty bad because, Giants fans, if they had lost 3 straight, they've been frustrated with this team and with this offense, and it really did seem as if, the Ravens, it started to catch up to them that they were just so shorthanded with their personnel, they were just so short on talent that it started to catch up with them pretty much in every phase that, if the game continued to be played, they would have continued to get worse and worse and worse because they were just so short on guys. And, like you said, when Odell Beckham's starting to get matched against guys that I didn't even know existed, then, the Ravens have problems. So it caught up to them in the end, and that surely was a huge factor in the end result of this game.
I think one of the real disappointments for the Ravens this year has been the pass rush, and Suggs has been a small part of that, and now it appears as though he is gone with the biceps injury. Keeping Eli Manning clean, he reminds me a lot of his brother when he doesn't get pushed around, right? He can do those things when he's not under duress, and the Ravens gave him far too much time on Sunday for me.
Yeah, Eli was much more comfortable. Ben McAdoo even passed a comment after the game that he thought he was more comfortable, and stood in there and had his footwork kind of right, which is something the last 2 weeks he did not have. In Green Bay, he was especially shaky. He was getting the ball out, even in Minnesota, the past 2 weeks, just getting the ball out too quickly. Essentially, it looked like he was spiking the ball into the ground. And he certainly looked like, in the first half, he completed over 60% of his passes, but he was just dumping the ball off. In the second half, he kind of built up some confidence and was able to stand in that pocket, and that was a big deal. because he was able to make some big throws, and especially to Odell Beckham down the field. And in order to do that, you need some time. And he was given some time. And when you give Eli Manning time, that's when he's dangerous, and that's when the Giants' offense can do damage. And look, the way they're built is their weaknesses. One of their biggest weaknesses is you can create pressure off the edges. Their offensive tackles are definitely susceptible to really good pass rushers, and if you could take advantage of that, make Eli get the ball out of his hands really quickly, the offense has been, especially against teams like Minnesota and Green Bay that were able to do it, their offense was badly out of sync. And the Ravens were not able to do that consistently, especially in the second half. And you see what happens. Next thing you know, Odell Beckham's got 222 yards receiving, including 211 in the second half alone, which is just an insane number.
By the way, it's the first time we've seen the Giants up there in a real game in the new stadium. And, I've seen Springsteen up there a couple of times. I've seen the Jets up there a couple of times because we played up there. Well, it's a very sleepy crowd, the Giants crowd. And I don't mean that in necessarily a disrespectful way, because I think I see that in a lot of me. I was in Jacksonville and in Cleveland earlier this year, But for what the stadium represents, the stadium has not traveled. Almost like Camden Yards here in Baltimore. Everything sort of changed when Camden Yards replaced Memorial Stadium for the crowd, for the mojo, for the home field advantage. I mean, the old place was a bit of a hellhole back in the Lawrence Taylor Parcells days. From a fan standpoint, from an intimidation standpoint, it's almost like sort of a friendly little place to visit now.
Yeah, the Giants actually do not have a great record at home over the past couple of years. It has not been a huge home field advantage. The wind is not a big, humongous factor anymore, as it used to always be. It used to be a extremely windy stadium when it was a Giant Stadium before.
Well, especially when Parcells would open that door.
yeah, right. The kicking there used to be a nightmare for guys. Now it really isn't that bad. You really don't get those windy, crazy kind of days anymore. And you're right. I mean, it's just really not. You go to stadiums across the country. There's way louder stadiums, and also the Giants fans in general. There's frustration with this fan base. Look, they haven't made the playoffs. They missed the playoffs for 4 straight years. They were on the verge again of the other day of losing their 4th straight game. So there was the fans were getting restless. So you could sense that, and also the stadium is. It's different than everyone else because they have to share a stadium, right?
Right.
So when you build a new stadium and 2 teams have to share it, it's way more sterile than, say the Ravens when they built the stadium.
What'll be interesting for us, because we're going to be up there next week. We'll see the difference. You know what I mean, between the Jets and the Giants crowds. And the Jets might be more frustrated. And I know there's a different fan base for both of these teams. I've been up there. I've seen that. I just remember the Giants as being a little hardy. I remember the seats being full. I remember it on at least defense being a little bit difficult to operate. It didn't have any vibe like that at all. But then I look at the Giants team and say, well, they can't run the ball.
You missed the playoffs 4 straight years. Yeah, you missed the playoffs 4 straight years. That's what happens. I mean, there's frustration in this fan base. It's true. It's 100% exists.
He is Jordan Raanan. He covers all things Giants football for ESPN Nation. Jordan, what do you make of the Ravens at this point? And what did you make of Flacco specifically? He's going to get a lot of the bullets this week. He's almost the last man standing at this point. If you start to talk about Smith and Suggs and Yanda and Ronnie Stanley and all the guys that were missing, he led a drive to win the game, for crying out loud, and then the defense let Beckham get behind him.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this about Flacco. The Ravens, they made an offensive coordinator change, right? Because they wanted to be able to hit more big plays, get the ball down the field. Well, they did that for sure. So if I look at it from a Raven perspective, look, they were so shorthanded. They were able to run the ball in the first half, and they weren't in the second half. But like we said, how much of that is because of the injuries? How much of that is because they were without such key pieces to the offensive line? And I thought it was surprising in the first half that they were even able to be that successful running the ball against this Giants team. This is a pretty decent Giants run defense, and they did a pretty good job. But again, it seemed to catch up with them at the end that they were so shorthanded, and and eventually it came back to bite them.
Tell me about Odell Beckham and, obviously the frustrations last week of the left tackle. It is New York. It is sort of larger than life. And this was almost like I always wondered if Chad Ochocinco played someplace that mattered. He is the toast of the town at this point. Certainly after a game like Sunday, you see his capabilities in one fell swoop. We won't see the Giants for 4 years. Won't see him up there for 8 years. It certainly feels like he's headed to the Hall of Pretty Good if he can keep his head on because he's got that kind of talent. I mean, he might be the best player in the league.
Odell Beckham's ridiculous. I mean, even when you watch him in practice, I mean, he's so much better than everybody else, and you could just tell. This guy is really, really special talent, and every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to take it to the house. And as you saw Sunday, he did it a couple times, and he's a guy who can carry the team. I mean, he's that good. He's under 6 foot, right? And he's just the best player on the field for the Giants, and they'll go as far as he can take them, and that, which is a strange thing for a wide receiver. I mean, he's Steve Smith in his prime, but even better. And Steve Smith was darn good in his prime, and he's still pretty good now. He's still able to do some things in the later stages of his career. But Odell Beckham is a special player, and he is that team. I mean, he has been for the last 2 years, and he is again this year. He's basically become a bigger star than Eli Manning already. Eli Manning has 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl rings, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and the biggest star in the Giants is Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, I didn't see Manning jerseys on the backs of people.
And the best player on the Giants is Odell Beckham.
Yeah, I mean, but he's also sort of combustible, right? I mean, it's sort of teetering when that guy's your best player. I mean, there is some inconsistency. There's a lot of things that have to go right for him to even touch the ball. I think that's the hardest part, and then the personality on top of it with a coach who is not a personality guy, with a lot of players there that I guess by design and by the design of Tom Coughlin, they have a lot of guys like Eli Manning, right? They don't have a lot of rah-rah. There's not a lot of sizzle on that steak. But, I think he brings enough garlic butter and Cabernet for everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, Odell Beckham is a unique individual for sure. And he is combustible, like you said. And you saw it even late in the game. And he picked up a huge penalty that actually gave the Ravens a chance, a better chance to go down.
For taking his helmet off. That's like rule 1, man, right? I mean, don't break the rules.
Yeah, but, it's crazy. Like, my mentions and stuff now. Like, people, there's 2 sides to this guy. Like, some people defend him to death. How is that in the field of play? But, I mean, come on. It's a simple rule. Just keep your helmet on until you get to the sideline. He wasn't on the sideline. You can't just go behind the end zone and do whatever you want, and you can't just go celebrate. And the emotions get the best of him a lot of times, and that's the downside of Odell. I mean, it's part of what makes him great. This is why it's such a hot topic. It's part of what makes him great. This emotion and the energy that he has. He's one of those guys. He needs that to thrive. He needs that to be good. But at the same time, he's walking a ridiculously fine line at all times. And sometimes it boils over and turns into bad. And sometimes it helps him, go and break a 66-yard touchdown run on 4th and 1. So that's the dilemma the Giants are dealing with. And they're trying everything possible, including bringing in his wide receivers coach was his wide receivers coach at LSU, a guy he really respects and listens to. Like, they bring in voices like that. That is basically a move that was made 99% with Odell Beckham in mind. Like, their wide receiver was brought in specifically for Odell Beckham. So that's kind of all you need to know about that situation.
Jordan Raanan covers all things Giants for ESPN NFL Nation. You can follow him out on Twitter. Last name is spelled Raanan. He's also at ESPN.com, which is everywhere. I'm going to ask you the most serious question of the whole sit-down here, Jordan. What is your favorite
There's some really good ones, but it's him wearing these shirts, and I like the one where it just says "Fantasy Stud."
Well, I mean, he is acting them
When
out at least, right?
When you get 222 yards, receiving, you're certainly a fantasy stud.
Yeah,
I wish he was on my fantasy team. I'd take him any day of the week.
Yeah, we had a game here 15 years ago where Jimmy Smith went for 290 yards in the air back in the Mark Brunell era. This was the biggest slapping I think I've seen the Ravens defense take. And certainly, literally, very many times you could talk about the difference in the game being one player. I guess the Giants will have a lot of that going on. Where do you see them in this NFC East mess at this point? I mean, it's pretty clear to me the Eagles and the Cowboys are probably better teams.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The Eagles are starting to come back to the pack a little bit. I mean, they have a rookie quarterback. Let's see them hold up. I'm not sure offensively that they're going to be able to hold up, but we'll see as we go along here. But the Cowboys definitely. I mean, they just went into Green Bay, won in Green Bay, and basically said we're going to win the NFC East. And it's hard for me to see. I mean, the Cowboys need to go 5-5 to win 10 games right now. So. The Cowboys are in really good shape.
But they're going to have a quarterback controversy. That's going to be bigger than Texas, I think, in a couple of weeks.
They will, but at the same time, that's not the worst thing in the world to have, is at least they have two quarterback options. There's some teams that don't have a quarterback option. So to have two
like the Redskins.
Options, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Hey, don't knock the Redskins. They won 4 straight, too, but while we're at it. So the division is very competitive. The Giants are going to have to win games. They fortunately have an okay schedule. They have some winnable games. But at the same time, this team hasn't beaten a really good team in several years. So, you can't just beat up on patsies all day. You're going to have to win some good games, and the Giants have not proven that they can do that so far. So I'm a little reluctant to think that they're a team that can really put a bunch of wins together and make the playoffs. I think they're more of like an average team, middle of the road, which probably the Ravens are too right now. So
hey, man.
they're probably in the same boat around that 8-win mark.
Save me a cot and some cookies. We'll be back on Sunday up to the Meadowlands to take on the Jets. The Jets have their own problems, right? I mean, so we'll get to them.
Sure.
And if we can't steal one of these games before the bye, we're going to be crying at Halloween. Jordan, great having you on, man. I appreciate the time. Thanks for taking a little bit of time with us and talking some Odell Beckham. And by all means, for sharing the emojis, because the world needs more Odell Beckham emojis.
Yeah, the Odell emojis are actually very fun. I really have a blast using them all the time. There's some actually very interesting ones in there. You kind of shake your head, but
I would have loved to have had a dancing Ray Lewis emoji at some point 15 years ago, but we didn't have emojis back then. Only the Japanese had those. Jordan, great having you on, man.
That would be pretty cool, by the way. That would be pretty cool.
Well, it would dance, and it would dance. It's hot in here. Hey, I appreciate you, Jordan. Thanks, man.
All right, anytime, man.
You got it. Jordan Raanan joining us here, Raanan, and under his namesake, out on Twitter, you can follow him at ESPN.com for all things red, white, and blue, and black and blue and pink on Sunday. The Ravens getting ready for the New York Football Jets this week after, I don't want to say unlikely loss, but certainly lots of injuries. And as much as we're going to beat them up this week, they probably didn't play a very bad road football game other than a couple of big plays where the ball went over their head. And I think Eric Weddle and Ladarius Webb, and, at some point when Jimmy Smith gets himself back together, maybe the secondary can pick up the pieces. Certainly it won't look like that against the Jets on Sunday. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Our morning newspaper ships each and every morning. It is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. That happens at 7 a.m. each and every morning. Last but not least, breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. Much like the firing of the offensive coordinator last Monday, when it happens, you'll get it first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I am a very available individual, whether I'm in Las Vegas or Baltimore. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. No emojis, but I do stream live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.